Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam. Make sure you go check out all my books. Start with the best-selling Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and the 2 workbooks that are fillable that go right along with it, the Threat Assessment and Defense Assessment workbooks. Also, for your children, The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. Now, that's a book of pictures you give to your children, and you let them go through it, and in the pictures are lessons about security and awareness, and you, the parent, go over to teamlittlebigs.com and download the free lesson plans that go with each picture. All of this is a package that makes your life, your family more aware, safer, and able to look at yourself from the attacker's point of view. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. It's 2 accompanying workbooks, and The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children, and the lesson plans that exist on teamlittlebigs.com. Go check them out wherever books are sold. And let's start the show.
This not only as Secretary of Defense, but also as a former soldier and a former member of the National Guard. The option to use active duty forces in a law enforcement role should only be used as a matter of last resort and only in the most urgent and dire of situations. We are not in one of those situations.
This is Jonathan Gilliam back in on The Experts. The truth has arrived. Somebody's got to bring it. Somebody has to bring the truth. What we have seen today, folks, is absolutely, from a veteran standpoint, is one of the sickest things I've ever seen. And that soundbite that I played there at the beginning, I'm going to go in and go over that in great extent, because, and I just listened to it a few minutes ago for the first time. I've been seeing it reported all day, but those of you that know this show know that I do this show late at night before you get up and record it, and that so that I get everything that I can before the day starts for you. So what I just saw when I watched that, and again, remember, one of the reasons why I do this show is because what I couldn't do when I host on the radio or when I'm on television, sometimes I can't give you the big picture. I don't have time, or in certain circumstances, you're really kind of controlled as to what you can say. They don't want you going down certain alleys of truth because they don't want the truth out there. They think a lot of times it's either tinfoil hat stuff, or they're just not interested in it. Doesn't make for good clickbait. But what I'm seeing today alone, the stuff I'm going to give you is just from today, as far as military, leftist, at the highest levels. You thought that what they did in the FBI was bad. It was bad. Trust me. McCabe, who dirtbag is on CNN, I saw him yesterday. Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Comey, Mueller, Christopher Wray, and many others that we don't even know about. The CIA, the directors of all those agencies, Clapper, all that stuff is bad. State Department, filled with it. IRS, filled with it. Leftist. And what I'm going to show you is that I've been saying this for years, that the DOD is subverted. And today, there's no doubt in my mind. I know there's stories out there of people marching in protest in their uniforms and they were charged under the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's our law book. Today you had looked like a platoon of National Guard soldiers taking a knee in the protest. I'm absolutely shocked. Whoever the knucklehead is that allowed that to happen, he should be charged, and every single one of those individuals that got down on their knees should be charged under the UCMJ. I don't know what the penalties are for that right now. I don't have it in front of me. Quite frankly, I think they should be kicked out. Because when you are given an order, especially one is as sensitive as policing the streets of America, and you're in the military, that is tense of a situation as you can get. But remember, like I just pointed out to somebody on Twitter a little while ago, because I put the video of that up, and they said, that's their job, is to protect the people. That is not, and they said that's their oath, is to I've got to read it for you. And the person said that they're a patriot, and God bless them for that. But citizens out there, the citizenry, you got to smarten up and realize what the military actually is. The military and the law enforcement are no different than a fire department, right? A fire department's job is very specific. They're not going to come out there. Their job is not to come out there and put you in handcuffs. That's not their job. Firemen are there to fight a fire. And that's what they volunteer to do when they take the job. That's what they get paid to do. This individual on Twitter said their oath is to defend and protect, which that's wrong, these countrymen and women who stand before them and aft, trying to be poetic. And again, I don't want to make it sound like I'm calling this person an idiot, because probably majority, or at least half of the people in this country believe this way. If all such a moment requires is to take a knee and pray for their own families, why is that wrong? It's wrong because, one, it's against the law in the military. You can't wear your uniform in a protest, and you can't do it while you're on duty. That's one. Two, and you have to stick by the laws and the rules and regulations in the military. It's how the military functions. You can't just, it's okay. No, you have to stick by the rules, because in warfare, if you, I want to do it this way, that doesn't work. You get killed or you lose the battle. And our freedom depends on this. And so it's not just that they got on a knee in support of whatever they were supporting. I don't know if it was Black Lives Matter, which, by the way, was founded by 3 lesbian communists. I don't know if you realize that or not. Look it up. So they have orders. Their mission is to go out there and assist law enforcement. They wouldn't be there if shit hadn't hit the fan where they are. So they're there, and whoever the knucklehead is who's leading them decides it's okay for everybody to take a knee. One, it puts them in harm's way. Antifa is a terrorist organization. This isn't a racial statement, okay? And I hate to break it to everybody out there that is in support of what the protests act like they actually are. And I've said it 100 times. I think that the 4 guys that are in jail right now for the murder, and that was murder, of George Floyd, should be where they are. There's no doubt about that. I've talked to just in mind-boggling extent about the reality of what racism is in this country. It's not actually white on black. It's actually a societal problem of learned helplessness and repetitive disengagement further and further away from the ruling elite and the rest of us. They like this. And I've gone to extent about that. But let me just tell you, Black Lives Matter, the organization, it's not in your best interest. Antifa and Black Lives Matter work together tremendously. I've heard there's some disagreements in there now, and they're kind of getting their feathers ruffled. But in New York City, they're saying that now Black Lives Matter is going to have their own peace officers, that are going to march armed. How's that going to work out? And when they talk about why they're marching armed, they're saying because cops shouldn't be pointing a taser at a 7-year-old. Well, a 7-year-old is being used as a human shield from someone else, and they shouldn't be bringing their children out there in a protest where riots are happening. This isn't kumbaya and flowers out. People have been killed over the past 9 days. Killed. Multiple cops. Retired chief of police who was working security place died live on Facebook. People are dying, shot accidentally by the cops, shot by criminals who call themselves protesters. You put these people on their knee, these soldiers on their knee, you don't know what's on the other side of those people or what's standing right in front of you. Could be somebody with a bomb in their backpack. Who knows? It could happen. Maybe one of those people pull out a gun and mow all of them down. They were brought there under orders to protect that community. And the second whoever the idiot was that told them it's okay to get on a knee, they failed at that mission. I don't care if everything went cool. Their mission was a failure. And they should be held accountable for their actions under the UCMJ. So you had that happen today. Then you had this other knucklehead from the, let's see, what's he from? This is Michael. First of all, why do these people have Twitter? Why do you have somebody who's a master chief, a sergeant major, in the Army with a Twitter and putting out messages about social equality? He needs to be talking to his troops, not on Twitter. And I can't tell you, out of all the things that I've seen so far, the stuff that I'm giving you today, by far, outrages me more than anything, and it shows a direct correlation as to where this country is going, because all of these people, all of them, remember, these protests out there, they're not about George Floyd. There are a few people out there, but the rest of them have no idea why they're out there. They don't even understand why the cops and the inner city don't get along. It's because, as I keep saying, of this cyclical thing of the violence and all the stuff that goes on in the inner city, the drug dealing, the violent behavior, the disrespect of authority, the broken families, black on black crime. It's higher than it is anywhere else in every city, in the inner city. And that is because they've been taught learned helplessness and been told there's no hope over years and years and years by politicians, the majority of them Democrat, and community activists that don't do anything, and celebrities that never go down there and help them clean it up. There's no community watches. Those protests aren't happening in the inner city. They're happening in the cities, in the big cities where they can walk around and break stuff. Why do you think those protests are there? They should be protesting in the inner city around the precinct where the police are more aggressive. And those communities should be coming together to work it out. But they don't do that because they're not interested, because they're leftists. It's leftists that are organizing this. It's leftists that are drawing these people out. And it's leftists that have the National Guard soldiers take a knee. It's a leftist like this Michael Griston, Sergeant Major, 16th Sergeant Major of the U.S. Army. It's this guy. He's a leftist as well. You can't tell me that he's not. This guy is either such a narcissist, and I can guarantee if I went back and talked to people who served with him, probably say he's a big freaking douchebag. When I watch this and listen to what he's saying, it's all pointing to a point of that our DOD is done. Let me pull this up.
Our nation,
Okay, here you go.
right now, our nation and our army are struggling with racial inequalities. Soldiers and leaders are struggling with this difficult topic. Now is the time for us to listen to each other. And when
Now is your time to shut your mouth, Griston, and do your job and talk to your soldiers if you're having a problem. Your only concern is what's happening inside the Army, and in particular inside the area in the Army where you work. It's not your concern what's going on out here. If you want to be a community leader, get the hell out of the Army and go to your community and do that. Go be a congressman. But your job right now, and you think you would know it, being a sergeant major in the Army, you think you would know what your job is.
necessary, take the appropriate action. Now is the time for us to stand tall for our nation and our army. Right now,
I can't. This is beyond me that all these things are happening at the same time. This guy is a freaking moron who should be fired from his position for doing this. The same as the person who was leading those National Guard soldiers that took a knee. Probably all lip-locked and hugged with this guy. That's not all that happened today as far as the Department of Defense is concerned. Let's take a listen to Mr. Esper, the Secretary of Defense, who works for President Trump, who is the one who will make the decision on whether or not they put troops in the street.
Now,
Remember, this guy works for Trump. His opinion doesn't matter. If he wants to have his opinion, he should go get a job somewhere else. He should not be going and having a press conference and saying things that go against what the president may or may not consider. But we couldn't ask for that now, could we, from the Department of Defense? They should be called the Department of Leftists.
I do not support invoking the Insurrection Act. Last night,
Okay, so right there, this guy should have been fired right away. I don't know why he still has a job. If anybody listens to this and can get this message to the president, tell him this. We don't care if you fire everybody over and over again. The government is full of leftists, as today shows. Get rid of these people. The greatest thing you could do, if you don't do anything else, is fire all these people before the end of the year.
story came out based on a background interview I did earlier in the day. It focused on the events last Monday evening in Lafayette Park, and I found it to be inaccurate in parts. So I want to state very clearly for all to hear my account of what happened that Monday afternoon. I did know that following the president.
Now, what he's talking about is when the president walked from the White House over to the church and posed in front of it with a Bible. I've already said I thought it was a bad optical thing. But if the president wants to do that, he wants to do it. And the reasons why he did it, because that church had been burned the day before. It's been around since 1816. Every president in recent history has gone there. And he went there as a show of force that and listen, I'm glad that he went and stood in front of a church and held up the Bible. I really don't care what Esper has to say about any of this. What does it matter? There's riots going on. The country's falling apart because of COVID-19. And this guy wants to come out and tell everybody he doesn't agree with invoking the Insurrection Act, where it allows the president to put troops in the street that, by the way, are being overran. You literally had multiple precincts around the country where they literally left. The cops left. They deserted their precincts because they were overran. And that's not a reason to bring the troops out? How about the fact that all these things are being controlled by leftists? Antifa, the heads of Black Lives Matter, these fake protests that are doing nothing to mend the wounds that are happening in this country. None of it. They're not concerned about any of that stuff. He's more concerned about telling you about this when he walked over from the White House.
Remarks on Monday evening that many of us were going to join President Trump and review the damage in Lafayette Park and at St. John's Episcopal Church. What I was not aware of was exactly where we were going when we arrived at the church and what the plans were once we got there.
Okay. First of all, I highly doubt that. He is the Secretary of Defense. He doesn't just walk around like loop-de-doo with not knowing where he's going. Their schedules are just heartbeats, and they know everything that's going on. There's no way this guy didn't know where they were walking. And if nothing had been said, he wouldn't be right here. But he's a kiss-ass to the media, and he's a kiss-ass to the leftists in this country.
It was also my aim, and General Milley's, to meet with and thank the members of the National Guard who were on duty that evening in the park. It is something the President likes to do as well. The path we took to and from the church didn't afford us that opportunity, but I was able to spend a considerable amount of time with our Guardsmen later that evening as I moved around the city to many of the locations at which they were posted.
Which he should not have been doing. There are riots going on. There are cops being killed around the country. People being injured big time. And this guy's going to go around. He's the Secretary of Defense. His job is to make sure that the Pentagon and the military has a liaison between it and the president. And he's also supposed to carry out the policies that the president wants, including the Insurrection Act. And that's it. Listen, if he wants to go visit the troops when they're not on a mission, that's fine. But literally, the troops that are on the street in these cities with the National Guard are literally one step away from being engaged with killers. I didn't want to hear any more of this. It's just stupid. And as if that wasn't enough, General Mattis, who I'd never have liked, don't know how he got his rank. There's nothing about the guy that I liked. All these generals and admirals for that matter, who are at that high level, need to pause and realize that they did not win any war since World War II. There have been battles that have been successful, mostly because of the men that have waged those wars, but not because these people were leading. We haven't won the war on terror. That's still going on. Don't know if you realize that. There are still people out there that hate us from abroad and inside the United States of America that want to carry out terrorist attacks. China is a major issue. Iran, Russia. But as far as warfare goes, they're failures. 20 years fighting fundamental Islam, and they have never named it. And they're the ones who run the DOD. So General Mattis comes out, and his comments are, I have watched this week's unfolding events. And by the way, General Mattis is a big reader, right? So his comments are full of word salad. These people love to make themselves sound so smart. It's one of the, I've been watching this show about Jeffrey Epstein on Netflix. By the way, almost everything that Jeffrey Epstein did was during the Clinton, Bush, Obama era. None of it was during President Trump's era. All the crimes and the rapes and all these things. And when he got off, when he should have been charged, he spent, it was like 16 months in 12-hour days in a jail cell. And he was out of jail for 12 hours a day so he could go work. They didn't keep any tabs on him. He would go supposedly work for 12 hours and then go back to the jail, sleep, and then go out the next day. And that was 6 days a week. 1 day a week he had to stay in jail. That lasted 16 months. And then he was on probation for a period of time. They never kept any track of it. He was flying all over, doing all over, having girls come visit him. All that was under the Bush-Obama era, right? These people remind me of him. he was a con artist from the very beginning. And I still, this is a whole nother show I have to do. I still believe that Jeffrey Epstein works either for an organized criminal enterprise or he is an intel source for some agency. And that's how it was anyway. And that's how they were getting information, was by jamming people up. They get them down there and they give them whatever they want, and then they own them. Anyway, that's a side note. But he was a bullshit artist. And these people are the same way. Mattis didn't win any wars for us. The ex-Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mike Mullen, Rear Admiral Mike Mullen, he's another one that's all angry. John Allen, General John Allen is another one that came out against Trump. Listen, people have to realize these individuals are not coming out against Trump because of what Trump has done. They're coming out against him because they like what's happening. They are in support of the leftist movement. Have you looked at these individuals? They all look like Barney Five. I don't know why. What happened to the generals that looked like they were going to kick some ass? These guys do not. They all look exactly the same, like Barney Five from Andy Griffith's show, put on a Marine Corps or Navy uniform and started walking around like they're badass. So Mattis goes on and says, he's a word salad guy because that's how these guys BS them, everybody. They put on these big words and they go out there and say all these things, and I'll show you right away where he is absolutely wrong. He says, I've watched this week's unfolding events angry and appalled. Mattis writes, the words equal, not saying he's angry and appalled at Antifa. He's not angry and appalled at Black Lives Matter and how they're lying to everybody and saying this is about George Floyd when it's really about their socialist communist power grab. He's not mad at that. He's not mad at the destruction of the country. He's not mad about the looting and the cops that have been killed. He's mad because of Trump. He says he's angry and appalled, Mattis writes. The words equal justice under law are carved in the pediment of the United States Supreme Court. Now, he does not reference right away in the beginning of this, he doesn't even reference the Constitution. He references the Supreme Court. What veteran out there would tell me that doesn't sound odd? He goes on to say this is precisely what protesters are rightly demanding. That's a lie. There are people out there walking that think that's what's going on, but that's not what's going on. They may have their hearts in the right place, but even they don't understand. It doesn't resonate in their brains. They're walking around Manhattan, which is probably the least racist place in the United States. They're not in the 75th precinct where they probably get shot and killed. They're not out there protesting. Same thing in Chicago, same thing in LA, same thing in Portland. These people aren't protesting where the problem exists. Of course, he doesn't bring that up. He thinks they should be able to do what they want. And your right to assemble doesn't mean you have the right to assemble anywhere, anytime, that you can brutalize anybody and break anything and disrespect cops. You're going to get pushback. And the pushback should come from the citizens of the United States. But we talked about that yesterday and the day before. We know how that works out. Not real well. He goes on to say, is a wholesome and unifying demand, one that all of us should be able to get behind. Yeah, I get behind the Constitution, Knuckles, not the Supreme Court that has allowed babies to be killed, which you're referencing now. The protests, he says, are defined by tens of thousands of people of conscience who are insisting that we live up to our values as people and our values as a nation. This guy, who was a failure at his job, who uses his position for personal self-gratification and craps all over the Constitution in this statement alone, not even just when he was the Secretary of Defense under President Trump, worthless. All his concern, his biggest concern, was making sure that transgenders can still serve in the military, even though a guy with flat feet couldn't, or somebody with asthma who can treat their issues. But if you're transgender, which you will be attached to a doctor for the rest of your life, that's okay. Let's put them in battle. That was his big thing. So he basically is a leftist social warrior. He goes on to say, Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime who does not try to unite the American people. Really? Really? Obama united the country? I don't think so. I don't think so. Jimmy Carter, he didn't unite the country. Listen, Reagan didn't even unite the country. And George Bush 41 certainly didn't. 43, he had 9/11, so that unified people for a while, but it wasn't, as I told you the other night, a unifying event. It actually caused a lot of problems socially in this country. He said, it's just remarkable. He says he tries to divide us. This is General Mattis is saying that President Trump is trying to divide the people. President Trump didn't start this. He didn't sit on George Floyd's head. He has been remarkably quiet through this whole thing, but with his finger on the trigger, if he had to pull it to get the troops out there to save the country. He didn't do it already. He didn't jump on immediately. He didn't immediately go on there and condemn governors. The governors are the ones that condemn themselves. And mayors. What has the president done through this to divide the people? This guy is an idiot. And I hope one day I can be in the same room as him, because you're going to get a film of me telling him he's an idiot. Him, along with Mike Mullen, Admiral Mike Mullen, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and General John Allen, one of the goofiest people I've ever seen in my life. All of them. Mike Mullen, Rear Admiral Mike Mullen, comes out and says, "It sickened me yesterday to see security personnel, including members of the National Guard, forcibly and violently clear a path through Lafayette Square to accommodate the president's visit outside St. John's Church." Okay, first of all, they didn't violently do it. As soon as they started walking out there, people started throwing things. I've watched the video over and over. Rick Unger, who, is a friend of mine, but disturbs me in and it's the same thing with liberals all over the place. It disturbs me how gullible you are. His response when I was saying that I watched the video and stuff was flying over, he said, "Those are just water bottles." You don't stop and evaluate the projectiles being thrown at you and then decide they're just water bottles. Have you ever been hit in the head with a water bottle? I have. It can knock you out. And if you're knocked out, the President of the United States, the commander of the free world, and the commander-in-chief of our military, when I say he's the commander of the free world, what I should say, he's the most powerful entity in the free world, the commander-in-chief of our military, and the White House and his staff is right down the road. And people start throwing things. Who's to say the next one might not have been a water bottle? It might have been a grenade. And these guys pushed the people back. They didn't put tear gas out like the news reported. It was smoke. And the president has every right to do that. When he moves, if he's in any danger and he needs to go from here to there, then that's what he should be able to do. Nobody got killed. And if those people had just stepped back, none of that would have happened. But they're all a bunch of freaking pricks out there that are around there marching around, and they just thinking that they can throw their weight around everywhere. And here is a lesson for the conservatives. By and large, if you get together, they prove that you can kind of throw your weight around. But if you're going to go up against the National Guard and law enforcement and throw your weight, you better get ready to be stomped into the ground, especially when the president's a block away. I don't care what Mike Mullen says, or John Allen, or Mattis, James Mattis. I hate that name, James. If your name's James, I'm sorry, but I've had a lot of issues with stupid people named James. Not everybody, I guess. Jim. Jim's a great name. Even if your name is James, you should just call yourself Jim. Anyway. It's unbelievable. Now, I know the oath of office, okay? I know the oath of office. Of course, I took the oath of office multiple times in different agencies. But I went in and I typed in, because this guy was saying this stuff about the oath of office. I was going to copy it and put it on Twitter, but it's too long. And I went to military.com, and it's interesting because they have the oath of office on here, an article. This is military.com, right? At the bottom of the article, it says, whoever wrote this should be slapped. It says, before you raise your right hand, make sure you understand what you're swearing or attesting to. Here it is. The oath of enlistment should not be taken lightly. You will be bound to it for the next 4 to 6 years at a minimum. Now, I know veterans are falling over right now as they listen to this. You don't take the oath for 4 to 6 years. Your job, you may enlist for 4 to 6 years. Your contract as an officer active may be 4 to 6 years, but your oath is forever. It doesn't expire. And whoever wrote this, I'm looking to see if I can see who wrote this. I don't even know. You should slap yourself, because you take your oath forever. The stuff that's going on, I'm just shocked by this today. In fact, I'm not even going to go over any of the other news. I just want you all to stew on that. Because this is the most important day, I think, one of the most important days in the history of this country is what happened. As you listen to this, it will be yesterday. It's just unbelievable. Today is the 4th of June, 2020. Yesterday was the 3rd of June. What happened yesterday should be a wake-up call to every patriot out there. I know it won't be. I've talked to several people online who said, they asked me what they need to do. Where do they go? They don't have direction. And I tweeted out, I said, for all those asking, get all the people that you know together, have meetings, start talking about what's happening. Coordinating so you can know how everybody else is prepared, because you don't know what's going to happen. And they said their neighbors and most of their family could care less. They're not even interested. You better get interested, folks. Because if the socialists get in charge, you will not like it. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace. And we out of here.